2022 gave us SZA and Beyoncé, 2023 gave us Mitski and Lana, but 2024 has been different. The girls have been putting out albums that are becoming instant classics. Just when mainstream music was starting to become repetitive and stagnant, the girls decided to switch the narrative this year and bring music back. What is going on? My name is Camden, and in this video we're going to be talking about the 8 female albums that I've enjoyed the most this year. If you're learning English, the words and phrases that are highlighted in gold in the subtitles will have detailed explanations in the description in the context that I use them. Why am I doing this? Because learning languages is hot, and my subscribers are hot. Do you want to be ugly? Subscribe. First album that I want to talk about that made me realize that we were going to be in for a good year in music is Orquídeas by Charli Uchis. Charli explains that orchids are actually the national flower of Colombia and also the flower of fertility, and with this being a Spanish-forward album released at the very beginning of the year and right after the announcement of her pregnancy with Don Toliver, you can see how there's some pretty serious intention put into this project. I genuinely believe that Charli has one of the most ethereal and beautiful voices in music right now, and I'm obsessed with the way that she seamlessly glides between Spanish and English throughout the entire project. It just scratches that itch in my brain. I remember the first time that I listened to this album. It was released when I was on my trip to Peru, and I literally hiked to Machu Picchu to the beat of Dame Beso Muévete and definitely shook some ass to Muñequita in the nightclubs in Lima. My top 3 tracks are Dame Beso Muévete, Muñequita, Como Así, and Simple from the deluxe version. This is my favorite Charli Uchis album, and it gets a score of 77 on AOTY. After 4 long years of waiting in silence, Ariana Grande finally dropped her 7th studio album, the pop legend, icon, star, Ariana Grande dropped this year. I feel like I don't hear people talking about this album enough, but then again, Yes and We Can't Be Friends both hit #1 on the Billboard charts, so I guess she did get her flowers. Ariana's voice is so beautiful on this album, and we really get to see a more mature side to her here. I need you to listen. On the title track, she goes, "Now it's like I'm looking in the mirror. Hope you feel alright when you're in her."
I can't. Get out.
My top tracks are Eternal Sunshine, We Can't Be Friends, and The Boy Is Mine. This is my favorite Ariana Grande album, and it received a score of 70 on AOTY. If there's one singer in the entire world that can drop an album with vocals on par with Ariana Grande, it is the Beyoncé. And guess what? Beyoncé dropped an album this year. The second act of her Renaissance trilogy, Beyoncé dropped what is, in my opinion, her statement album, Cowboy Carter. I see Renaissance as her magnum opus, and then she used that power and influence to shine the spotlight back on black artists and country music. She featured Shaboozey on this album, and he is still #1 on the Billboard Top 10 charts, only for the 349th week in a row. I love the part in Sweet Honey Buckin' when she goes, AOTY and win. I ain't stuntin' about them. Take that shit on the chin. Come back and fuck up the pin. Because holy shit, that's actually what she did. She was actually referring to Lemonade in that lyric when she got snubbed at the Grammys. But the same could be said about Renaissance. But most of all, her performance with the Chicks that caused a lot of unnecessary controversy and sparked a lot of racism and hatred towards her and other black artists in country music of her standout track, Daddy Lessons. This album is so powerful, and using Lindy Mattel and several other iconic historical figures in music make it an album that already is and will always be a classic since the moment it was dropped. My top songs are Sweet Honey Buckin', American Requiem, Ya Ya, and 16 Carriages. I would say that this album and Renaissance have taken turns being my favorite, but I would say that this is my second favorite Beyoncé album. It received a score of 78 on AOTY. Picture this. It's freshman year of high school, and you see a guy with his headphones on, staring intensely at his computer screen. His jaw is on the floor, one hand like this, and the other one holding his chocolate milk. Well, that boy was me, watching the music video for When the Party's Over. Ever since that moment, I realized I was watching the birth of a literal legend in the making. What is so impressive to me about Billie Eilish is how she's always been good, but every single time she releases an album, it consistently is better than the last. When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go really defined her sound. Happier Than Ever ripped our hearts out and stomped on them. And now Hit Me Hard and Soft is her and Phineas's best work. If you didn't know, her brother is literally the producer and they have always worked very close together. Guess that proves that talent really is hereditary. It only has 10 songs, but they are each thoroughly composed and thoughtfully crafted works of art that flow together effortlessly. There are several goosebump-inducing moments on the album, and even though she's still early on in her career, I would see this becoming her magnum opus album. My top songs are Blue, Birds of a Feather, Skinny, and Wildflower, but there are genuinely no skips. It is my favorite Billie Eilish album and receives a score of 82 on AOTY, the album that shook the world and covered it in a shade of obnoxious green. I remember Spotify recommending it to me shortly after it came out and thinking, I'll give it a try. I was obsessed with Vroom Vroom back in the day, so I figured maybe if the first song grabbed my attention, I would finish it. And shortly after, it became my #1 streamed album of the year. It hadn't even been out for a month at this point. The background leading up to the release with the Brat wall, the lore with Lorde, and the whole Girl So Confusing remix that literally solved global girl drama for the rest of eternity, and the Von Dutch airport music video are 3 reasons that this album will forever be iconic. There's tons of videos on YouTube that already exist explaining how insane the marketing and build up for this release really was. The beats are sticky, the lyrics are actually raw and honest, and this is without a doubt Charli's magnum opus album. My top songs are Von Dutch, Spring Breakers, Guess, and Club Classics. I will also be seeing Charli on the Sweat Tour on October 7th, so more on that to come. It received a score of 85 on AOTY and is the album with the most amount of rankings this year. It is also the highest we've talked about so far, but will it be #1? Before this album, I knew a few of Clairo's songs like Bags and Sophia, but I never actually sat down to finish any of her projects until this one. The songwriting is just so intimate and charming, and her beautiful velvety voice and soft vocals make it a mesmerizing listen. It's one of those albums that makes me want to go sit on the patio on a rainy day, con un porro, and sip my triple blonde vanilla cappuccino with oat milk and cinnamon powder. The instrumentation is so luscious, and the vocal harmonies are tight. The overall sound is just so timeless and vintage, and my favorite tracks on this album are going to be Juna, Sexy to Someone, Add Up My Love, and Nomad. It is my favorite Clairo album, and in my opinion, it really defines her sound as an artist. It received a score of 80 on AOTY. On August 23rd, 2024, the earth shook because 2 albums on this list were released on the exact same day. One is completely dominating the Billboard Top 10 right now and has been since its release. And the other one we'll talk about next. I'm sure every single person watching this video right now has heard at least 3 of the songs from Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter. We all knew Espresso was Song of the Summer. Please, Please, Please was the perfect follow-up single. And now it's all about our good music taste. This album really doesn't feel like generic pop, even though it might be a pop album, because her vocal delivery, the catchiness, and the complexity of the instrumentation really make this one stand out in her discography. Sabrina has conquered the pop scene this year with force and solidified her new status as pop superstar. Since the release of the album, the 3 singles have been all over the charts, and Sabrina has held the position of #1 artist on the Billboard Artist charts. My favorite songs are the singles Taste, Espresso, Please Please Please, and Bad Kim. It is my favorite Sabrina Carpenter album, and it received a score of 64 on AOTY. And finally, we have made it to the last album on this list, and the #1 rated album so far of the year of 2024, Imaginal Disc by Magdalena Bay. We had our Brat summer, and now we're having Bottom Autumn, and Magdalena Bay is playing in our headphones. I had actually shamefully never heard of Magdalena Bay until I saw that they did have the #1 album of this year and decided to give them a listen. According to Google, they are an alternative pop duo consisting of Mika on vocals and Matthew predominantly on production. I don't really know how to describe this album as anything but a portal to sonic heaven. I feel like the album cover does a better job of explaining what it really feels like to listen to this album for the first time. The production matched with the gorgeous vocals, and countless turns and switches, this album just grabs your attention and holds it until the very end. I swear it gets better and better after every listen, and I don't know if I should be proud or ashamed of the fact that I've listened to the song Cry For Me 27 times this week, but the facts are facts. It is currently my most streamed album of the month, #1 on the AOTY charts of the year, and has already made the top 100 albums of all time list as well. Imaginal Disc receives a score of 89 on AOTY. My top songs on this project are Cry For Me, Image, Fear, Sex, and Watching TV. Well, we have made it to the end of the list. I honestly can't believe how important 2024 has been for music so far, and I can't wait to see what else this year has in store for us. This is my first YouTube video with my new camera and in my new apartment. If you're hot, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment so I can pay rent. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Let's see if I got any new comments. Aw, man.